This is your enemy. Now when you kick, I want you to remember to point your toe. Point your toe, allowing for maximum shoe to crotch ratio, increasing your kicking abilities tenfold. It's vital to the kicking and the crotch process. Again! 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 Left foot! Left foot! Again! 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 Double time!
What's up, dude? It's your boy Psycho, aka Doors number 98. How were your summer gotcha pulls? Mine were fucking fantastic.
Oh god, this is so disgusting! I think I'm gonna puke!
Tama Lancer is a 5-star Lancer who debuted with the 2018 summer event for NAFGO as part of the first batch of Summer Servants, where she's the featured 5-star among them. She's a hybrid utility and DPS Lancer with a special damage mod against male enemies, which also makes her a nuke Lancer. And why does she do more damage against males? Well...
まずは金敵次の金敵懺悔しやがれこれがとどめの金敵だ大天幕これが私の奥の手です
I was just an only child of the universe, and then
At level 90, Tomato Lancer has 15,147 HP and 10,726 attack, and with max Grails she has 16,594 HP and 11,741 attack. She's got slightly higher than average class star weight and average class star gen, 1.05 offensive MP gen, 4% defensive MP gen, a 40% death rate, and she's neutral summer, which, kinda like Nero Bride's alignment, is a unique alignment that she shares with only one other servant in the game, and we won't see the other one until next year. She's got the standard Lancer 2Q2B deck with a Buster NP. Her quick cards hit 4 times, her arts card hits twice, her Buster cards hit 3 times, and her extra attack hits 4 times. With these stats and command deck, Tamabe has solid MP gen and star gen. Just keep in mind that she's got quite a few traits that you want to look out for, like Divine, Earth or Sky, and Writing, and that her alignment's one of those funky alignments that lets her loophole some story stuff, but most of the time that shouldn't really be an issue anyway. Anyways, stats are boring, right? So let's get into the juicy stuff. And by that I mean her skills, not her juggernauts.
you are the sun and I am just the planets spinning around.
Sharky's first skill is Beach Flower EX, which increases party attack for 3 turns by 10 to 20%, and increases the star gen of all male teammates on the field with her for 3 turns by 22 to 42%, both on a 7 to 5 turn cooldown. Basically a charisma, which is always nice, but the star gen buff that it gives male teammates is quite significant. But since star gen buffs are a bit difficult to understand without context, I'll put it this way instead. Level 10 Beach Flower allows Emiya, for example, to produce around 23 crit stars, around that number, with his MP, without any other buffs active, when normally he'd only produce like 9 or something. So the main idea behind using this skill is that rather than relying on only one star gen on your team to be your main source of crit stars, like Jack for example, everyone is able to produce a lot of crit stars consistently while Beach Flower is active. The advantage here is that you no longer have to rely on only one servant's command cards for star gen, and instead you can consistently supply your team with crit stars every turn or so because everybody's able to produce crit stars to a certain extent. Though this comes at the disadvantages of having to build your team around Beach Flower and hand-picking male servants who have some star generation capabilities and having to rely on a skill for your star gen. Also, keep in mind that the star gen buff only applies to male teammates, like I mentioned earlier, so obviously Tama Lancer doesn't get for herself, though this isn't as big of an issue as we'll see in a little bit. But the reality is that unless you're running male assassin teammates or motherfucking Zashu Man with Tamabe, Beach Flower's star gen buff only helps with burst star gen, as demonstrated with the Emi example that I gave just earlier. So even though I just spent an entire minute or so hyping the fuck out of this star gen buff, it's really more situational than anything, though if you are paying attention and can take advantage of it while you can, it definitely makes a difference. Her second skill is Midsummer Witchcraft A, which charms one enemy for 1 turn, reduces their defense for 3 turns, inflicts curse on them for 5 turns, but increases their MP gauge by 1 as a demerit. The defense debuff goes from 20 to 30%, and the curse damage goes from 500 to 1000, all on a 9 to 7 turn cooldown. This is where Tamabe's kit starts getting a bit complex, and where her utility really starts kicking in. The curse is whatever, it's only supplementary damage anyway, but the defense debuff is quite big at 30%, which is indirectly like a 30% attack buff for your whole team if they target the enemy with the debuff. The charm is perhaps the most significant of the effects for this skill, as it's a universal charm, kind of like the one that ASMR Oni has, in that it'll charm anything in the game with a guaranteed chance, unless they happen to have like mental debuff resistance skills stacked beforehand or something. The fact that it increases its target's NP gauge by 1, however, complicates things because you're hastening an enemy's NP, which is usually not what you want unless you're up against another girl who stuns herself too. There are 2 ways to deal with this demerit though. The first way is to bring a teammate who's got a charge drain skill so that when you use this skill, you can combo it with the teammate's MP charge drain skill, so that basically you get rid of the demerit. The second way is to make sure that you have good timing with this skill. By now you should probably already realize that the most optimal time to use this skill is when an enemy's got a full MP bar and is about to blow, because by that point it's not like the demerit will really do anything, and the charm will stall them for another turn too. Both have their advantages and disadvantages though, and there's not really an easy way to deal with the enemy MP charge demerit, so set your team up in a way that the demerit won't completely fuck everyone. Her third skill is Goddess Metamorphosis B, which gives herself Invul for 1 turn, and it increases her crit damage, star gen, MP gen, debuff resistance, and her healing received all by 30 to 50%, and all for 1 turn, and all on an 8 to 6 turn cooldown. However, this skill will also put a delayed stun on her that will stun her after the turn that she uses this skill for 1 turn. Holy fucking skill effects, Batman! So clearly you can see that this skill gives her a ton of goodies, but the most important ones in my opinion are the crit damage, the star gen, and the MP gen. Because Tomalance is already pretty good at star gen with her quick card and extra attack hit counts, the 50% star gen buff turns her into a burst star gen, which makes up for the fact that her own first skill doesn't buff her star gen in the first place. So let's say that you have a Tama Brave chain 1 turn. Depending on what you can get a good chunk of crit stars, a good chunk of MP gain, or even both. But consider what we were theory crafting when we were discussing her Beach Flower skill. If you're using Beach Flower properly, you should be able to generate a steady supply of crit stars already, meaning that when you get that Tama Brave chain, you'll have stars ready to go on her unless she's in a team with archers or riders, then in which case, feels bad, man. Long story short, Tama's third skill works the absolute best when you've got a Brave chain with her and all the command cards are loaded with crits. Crits do double the damage, double the MP gain, double the star gen, I think, so it makes Tama's Brave chains really frickin' deadly. Overall, this is a skill that improves both her DPS and her utility as a star gen, so it's good stuff all around. Well, except for the self-stun, that is. Be careful with it because, like the demerit on her second skill, the delayed stun is really annoying to deal with because not only does it mean that Tomalancer can't act next turn, obviously, but also, more importantly, you can't back-to-back Tama Brave Chain, which would be really scary since otherwise that means that Tam could potentially nuke a bitch twice in a row. So make sure that when you're thinking about using this skill, you're able to set up your Summer Bushy Tail to do as much damage as possible before she goes and pulls a John.
No Johns.
However, skills or CEs that cast debuff immunity will guard against a delayed stun since it's a debuff. For example, Plot Monk's third skill, which blocks all incoming debuffs for 1 turn, will also block Tomalancer's delayed self-stun, so in case you do find yourself using these 2 plots of land together, make sure to use Sanzo's third skill first, and then Tomalancer's third skill, in that order, otherwise you done fucked up.
Now you fucked up!
As for her passive skills, she's got Riding A, which increases her quick card performance by 10%, which is useful on her as a Lancer, Territory Creation A, which increases her arts card performance by 10%, which is not so useful on her since she's only got 1 arts card as a Lancer, and Divinity A++, which increases her own damage by 230, which is meh, though it is the highest rank of Divinity in the game, so that's cool, I guess. What's not just meh, though, is her NP. Nutcracker's NP is Tokonatsu Nikko Hyoke Kasa Choai Ishin, which, other than having a name that's way too long, just like Tamakaster's NP, is a single target buster NP that deals 600 to 1000% damage depending on NP level, and deals additional damage to male enemies as their special damage mod from 150 to 200% extra damage depending on overcharge level. This NP is a direct reference to the Polygamy Castration Fist move that Tam had back in CCC, where she tests it out against Robin first, which is also why the game tells you to refer to Robin in case you want a detailed account of how this MP works, because he'd know all about it, probably. Though why she calls it a castration fist when she's very clearly kicking her opponent in the balls is beyond me. Testicular abuse aside, this MP is what makes Tamalancer a male nuker. Unfortunately, this isn't an independent buff that she casts on herself, kind of like Jack's anti-female overcharge buff, so you'll only get the extra anti-male damage on the MP itself. But it's such a huge buff that it probably doesn't matter anyway. So, in other words, if you ever come across these dudes on screen, consider employing the services of your local family jewel exterminator to deal with them.
Thinks it needs you, but not as much as I do, as much as I.
The most important thing that you need to be aware of with your own Foxy Lancer is that her skills, namely her second and third skills, are not easy to use in a proper story or challenge fight scenario. Much like Tama Caster's kit, Tama Lancer's kit isn't full of brain-dead skills that you can just use whenever the fuck you want because you're a top-tier caster named Whiny Bitch or Galactic Avalon Troll. Instead, you need to be strategic with her skills, because sometimes you'll find yourself in positions where you really can't do much about the demerits that they bring with them, so you kind of have to learn how best to use them and get good enough at the game to understand when the proper times are to use them, or to be resilient enough to deal with the demerits as best you can. And the better you learn how, or I guess it's more accurate to say when, to use Tamalancer's second and third skills, the much easier of a time you'll have using her. This mentality obviously applies to all servants, but especially to Tamalancer. Other than that, she's a decent star gen herself, who brings quite a handful of utility to the team, specifically her Beach Flower, Charm, and Defense debuff. And of course, use her to nuke male archers or berserkers.
'Cause you're the last of a dying breed. Put our names in the wet concrete. I wonder if the therapist knows.
So because Beach Flower is one of her skills, naturally give Summeran male teammates, specifically those who can generate crit stars. In other words, get used to running her with a lot of male assassin teammates. So guys like Regend, Fap Arm, Carry, and especially Hamtaro are all great pairings with Tamalancer. If you're looking for non-assassin male teammates, consider maybe Fat Albert, Adult Raiden, Despacito, Kitty Gill, and the curry boy that people actually like, Jet Li, or Son of Anarchy. But if you're whale enough to also have Arrogant Fuckboy, or just pull one off your friends list somewhere, he and Tamalancer are the D3, the dynamic divine duo. Lame acronym, yeah, I know, but still, both Gil and Tamabe have charisma, so they can together buff each other for over 40% attack for 3 turns, and Gil becomes a legit star gen with all the damn hit counts he has on his command cards. They've got quite the synergy, even if it's not like, Jolt or Lizzie levels of synergy, so run them together for the lulz if you like, and see just how well they do. But remember that Tamalancer does lack a self-heal in her kit, so either babysit her yourself with Mystic Code heals, or give her a teammate who can handle the heals on their own. Also consider bringing along people who can provide debuff immunity or debuff clears, like Sanzo, whom I mentioned earlier, or straight out of Compton Saint. Speaking of heals and debuff immunity, Nurse Joy's most recent buff makes her a prime teammate here, since her first skill has the 2 things that Tamalancer really needs. It's too bad that she won't be able to get the Beach Flower Star Gen buff, but that's okay, because that's probably a small price to pay for being able to toss the self-stun out the window. Because of her potential as a nuke lancer, first and foremost, allow me to recommend the meme that is Black Grail for all your nuking needs. Don't even bother worrying about the HP demerit. Summer Junko is pretty fucking thick, with at least 6 Cs, so she can tank the Black Grail damage just fine. After all, she's a strong and independent Japanese woman who don't need no wait, that meme doesn't work here. Fuck! Other than that, the usual suspects apply here as well. LZO, Launch Order, Participation of the King if you have that, or others for command card damage, Atumbra, Victor, Knight's Pride, or Gudao for crit damage, Heaven's Feel, Halloween Princess, or Black Grail like we just mentioned earlier for MP damage, and Be Elegant or 2030 for additional Star Gen support. Crit Star Gather CEs like Seal Designation Enforcer are also viable so that you can ensure that Tama can put her third skill to use when it really matters. Also consider Prismatic Cosmos to give Tamalancer a more consistent means of NP gain. Because of her self-stun demerit, you might also want to consider bringing along CEs that block debuffs, like Vessel of the Saint, if you don't have or can't bring teammates to provide debuff removal or prevention. And because she's got a thick HP rating, you could use her as a temporary tank in case there's a setup you want to do for a particular fight. Just make sure to heal her along the way if you do decide to go with that. Or you can just forget everything that I said here and just give her the Guile CE called Golden Sumo and call it a day. Her own max spawn CE, Sunset Beach, increases the team's quick and buster performance by 10% while she's got it equipped and is on the field. It's basically like a weaker launch order, but it works for the whole team. A pretty good choice actually if you want to use Tomalancer as more of a support, since part of her kit is to turn her whole team into better star gens. So since her max bond CE buffs everyone's quick cards, it fits right in. Though it's probably better if you went with something else. By the way, that drink you see in her bond CE, yeah, she uses that as more or less a date rape drug.
Never walk away from, you're just the last of the real ones.
Tamabe is a hybrid support and DPS Lancer who's also an anti-mail nuke with her single target Buster NP. She's got a kit that, unlike most other skill sets in the game, actually has a bit of a skill ceiling to it in real fights, but despite that, her kit still provides a ton of utility both to her team and to herself. Though I guess it wouldn't really be called utility anymore if she's only buffing herself. And if nothing else, her kit fits perfectly with the Memeland meta that's gonna smack NAFGO in the face like a ton of bricks in about 4 months. And that's all you need to know about adult Chloe. Prisma Ilia event when, I need my goddamn feathers already. No Twitter poll this time, since I don't know when I'll be working on the next video in this series with what our next 2 events are gonna be, so yeah. In any case, go watch the video that I put out with this one on Squirtle in the meantime, and until next time, deuces.
What a dangerous night to